Imagine a wall of solid rock and ice, towering over 13,000 feet into the sky. The temperature is brutally below freezing. The air is thin, and standing at the base of this impossible barrier is an army of 50,000 men, 9,000 cavalry, and 37 African war elephants. Welcome back to Dormant Chronicles. It's 218 BC. The Roman Empire feels safe behind the ultimate natural fortress, the Alps. They thought no army could cross it. They thought the sheer physics of moving tens of thousands of men and heavy animals over sheer ice was impossible. And they were right. It was impossible. But Hannibal Barca didn't care about the impossible. Today, we are unpacking one of the greatest logistical and engineering nightmares in human history. We are going to look at the brutal dynamics, the terrifying avalanches, and the genius problem-solving that allowed an ancient army to conquer the mountains. This isn't just a story about war. This is a story about human endurance against the raw, destructive forces of nature. To understand the madness of this journey, we have to look at the sheer mechanics of the environment. The Alps are not just cold, they are a structural trap. Hannibal's army wasn't walking on paved roads. They were navigating narrow, unstable paths carved into the side of cliffs. Now, imagine the dynamic load of a single war elephant. We are talking about 4,000 kilograms of moving mass. The friction coefficient between a massive leathery hoof and solid ice is practically zero. Every step was a gamble with gravity. If one elephant slipped, the resulting kinetic energy would act like a massive wrecking ball. It wouldn't just fall, it would take dozens of men and horses down the abyss with it. The screams of falling men and animals echoing through the canyons became a daily psychological torture for the survivors. But gravity wasn't the only force trying to crush them. The mountains themselves were moving. Hannibal's march took place in late autumn. The snowpack was highly unstable. The vibrations of 50,000 marching boots, the clashing of armor, and the heavy footfalls of elephants acted as acoustic and physical triggers. The result? Devastating avalanches. Thousands of tons of snow and rock would suddenly detach, plummeting down the slopes with the force of a modern freight train, instantly wiping out entire columns of soldiers. Hannibal wasn't just fighting the local mountain tribes who ambushed them from above. He was fighting the material science of the mountain itself. Just when the freezing temperatures and hostile tribes seemed like the worst of it, the army hit a literal wall. A massive landslide had swept away the narrow mountain track. In front of Hannibal was a sheer drop-off, and blocking the only way forward was a solid face of unyielding rock. There was no way around it. The 4,000-kilogram elephants certainly couldn't climb it. They were stuck at high altitude, freezing to death, with no modern explosives, no heavy machinery, and time running out. How do you clear thousands of tons of solid mountain rock with just hand tools? You don't fight the rock with brute force. You fight it with thermodynamics. Hannibal ordered his men to cut down every massive tree they could find in the lower valleys and haul the timber up to the rock face. They built a colossal bonfire directly against the blocking stone, They let it burn until the rock was superheated, glowing with trapped thermal energy. The molecular structure of the stone was expanding, building up immense internal pressure. And then came the stroke of genius. Hannibal ordered his men to pour their rations of sour wine, essentially strong vinegar, directly onto the blazing hot stone. The rapid drop in temperature caused massive thermal shock. The sudden contraction, combined with the chemical acidity of the vinegar reacting with the alkaline elements in the limestone, caused the rock's tensile strength to completely fail. Deep microfractures violently ripped through the stone. The rock literally shattered itself. With the stone's structural integrity compromised, the soldiers could now easily pick it apart with basic iron tools. In a matter of days, they engineered a perfectly graded ramp right through the solid mountain, wide enough and stable enough for the elephants to walk through. It was a masterclass in ancient civil engineering, executed under the most extreme conditions imaginable. After 15 days of hell, they reached the summit. But the nightmare wasn't over. In fact, the hardest part of navigating the Alps isn't the climb. It's the descent. The southern slopes facing Italy are significantly steeper. And worse, they were dealing with treacherous snow dynamics. The fresh, powdery autumn snow had fallen directly on top of the smooth, icy crust of the previous winter's snowpack. Anyone who knows how steep mountain faces work understands how lethal this is. There is zero friction between those two layers. It creates a perfect slip plane. When the men and the massive elephants tried to step down, their feet would immediately punch through the fresh snow and hit the frictionless ice below. The heavy animals couldn't maintain their center of gravity. They slid uncontrollably, tumbling down the steep gradients, dragging men and supplies with them. And beyond the physics of the descent, there was a silent killer. Pure starvation. Maintaining the caloric intake of 50,000 men is hard enough, but an adult African elephant needs up to 300 pounds of food every single day. At 10,000 feet, there is no vegetation. There is only rock and ice. The logistical reality was brutal. The elephants were rapidly losing muscle mass, their massive frames deteriorating from the extreme cold and absolute lack of fuel. Every step down that mountain was paid for in blood, frostbite, and starvation. Finally, after 16 days of absolute agony, the surviving armies stumbled out of the icy foothills and into the fertile plains of northern Italy. But the cost was astronomical. Hannibal had started the climb with 50,000 men. He arrived with barely 20,000. More than half his army was swallowed by the mountains, lost to avalanches, freezing temperatures, and gravity. Of the 37 war elephants, incredibly, a fraction survived the sheer drops of the crossing, though the brutal Italian winter would soon claim almost all of them. But Hannibal's strategic gamble paid off in a way the world had never seen. Imagine you are a Roman sentry. You believe your northern border is an impenetrable wall of rock and ice. Suddenly, descending from the clouds, are 20,000 hardened, frost-bitten warriors, and with them towering grey monsters that you have never seen in your life. The psychological devastation was absolute. Hannibal didn't just bypass the Roman defences, he shattered their reality. He proved that no wall, not even one built by nature, is truly impenetrable if you are willing to pay the ultimate price in blood. The crossing of the Alps remains a masterclass in ancient logistics, extreme survival, and the sheer force of human will. It reminds us that history isn't just made by swords and shields, it's made by understanding the very mechanics of the earth, overcoming impossible physical loads, and pushing human endurance far beyond its breaking point. What do you think is the greatest engineering or survival feat in ancient history? Let me know down in the comments below. If you enjoyed this journey into the forgotten layers of the past, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to Dormant Chronicles, and ring the bell so you don't miss our next deep dive into history's greatest enigmas. Until next time, keep questioning the past.